Welcome to the Richard Bey Talk blog here, video and audio. This is the fifth installment. And don't forget, if you can't watch this on YouTube or on Facebook, you can always just listen to it while you run on a variety of audio podcasts, Google and Apple and whatever. Okay? So Russia, and Ukraine. Is there anything else to talk about during this whole week? And certainly the whole world's attention is focused on that part of the world and on this one man, Vladimir Zelensky, who is the president of Ukraine and an inspiring figure. Look at this. Can we have that full screen? Can you get that? Look, I mean, this is what people are making up already. But he is an inspiration to so many people. And I have to say, a master at, I guess, at creating, at avoiding obstacles and creating a storyline. I thought he was great when he was talking to Donald Trump, when Trump was holding up the munitions to send to Ukraine. Trying to coerce Zelensky into digging up negative information on his political opponent, trying to get something for himself, a quid pro quo, which was actually something that he faced impeachment for. Trump should have been impeached for that. But Zelensky, in the course of this, listen, I don't know if Russia go fuck yourself qualifies as Churchillian inspiration. That is, of course, what the soldiers said to the Russian ship when they were guarding Snake Island. Zelensky came up. The U.S. evidently made an offer to get him out of the country and his family to safety. And he said, send me ammo. I don't need a ride. And what was the other thing was, when the Russians come, they will see our faces. They will not see our backs. But he's become this figure. I can tell you, it's only February of 2022, but he's got to be Times Man of the Year for 2022, which should irk some other people. This is like, it reminds me emotionally and in terms of our attention, like Edward R. Murrow during the Blitz in England, and the people who had empathy in America listening to Murrow talk about the bombs falling in London as the German Luftwaffe flew overhead, bombing civilians, which is pretty much what they're doing in Ukraine right now. And this morning, from what I've heard on TV, even though it's not NATO, Zelensky, in the midst of all this chaos, in the midst of this apocalypse of war, he has filled out the forms for Ukraine to enter the European Union. Now, that's not NATO, but it would bring that country closer to Europe, and I think that's as close as it is already. But I think you have to ask yourself, why is it that all of these countries that are in the shadow of Russia, whether it was the shadow of Brezhnev's Russia or the shadow of Putin's Russia or the shadow of Gorbachev's Russia, why do they all want to join NATO? It's the same reason the third little pig wanted to build his house out of brick. They all feel threatened by Russia. It's not Russia that's threatened. It's the countries that are in the shadow of both communist Russia, imperial Russia, or Putin's Russia. And I think one of the things that should happen is, it was 2 weeks ago, the president of Finland was on State of the Union with Dana Bash. Why is she called Dana, not Dana? But it's Dana Bash. And he said more and more people in my country, considering what is happening to Ukraine, want us to join NATO. I think so. Finland has an 850-mile border directly with Russia. Now, Sweden has also recently expressed some kind of interest. Albert, you were going to say something or what?
Well, I was going to say, well, who would you rather be with? Russia or the United States? I mean, it's kind of simple.
Yeah, I remember the Three Little Pigs. It was the big bad wolf. In fact, in those days, it was a metaphor for Adolf Hitler and his expansion over Eastern Europe. But the same thing applies now to Putin. But here in America, we're trying to, we have these the SWIFT sanctions. We have sanctions against individual oligarchs. We have supposedly a movement now to impound the yachts, some of the mansions that they have. Hopefully that will happen pretty soon and make them feel the pain. But there was also a reaction across America in the bars and liquor stores where they went and they started grabbing everything that looked like it was Russian. In fact, two of the governors, Governor Tom Wolf, Pennsylvania, Youngkin, the recently elected governor of Virginia, and I think it was Sununu as well, because they have state-run liquor stores in New Hampshire. And they said, we want all the Russian liquor off the shelves. We're not selling it anymore. We're boycotting it. Now, what I have since found out is that Stoli is not made in Russia. And what's the other one? Smirnoff is not made. Smirnoff is made in a whole bunch of different places, but not Russia. Stoli is made in the free country of Latvia, which is a member of NATO and used to be one of the slave states of the Soviet Union. They grabbed it after World War II. But Stoli is made in Latvia, not in Russia. But the one vodka that is made in Russia is the one I drink. Russian Standard. That's the end of my marriage with Russian Standard, folks. I'm going to.
Now, where is it made in Russia?
St. Petersburg. It tells you right on the here. Doesn't it say it right on?
That's what I have.
Yeah, but that Stolchanaya is not made in Russia.
But this one says made in the USSR. I've had this for years.
It must be an old one because
it is.
It's made in. All right.
I'll share it with you when you like.
You know what they call you? Putin's useful idiot. That's what they call you.
No, I used to be. Now it's Trump.
Okay. But see, this is Russian Standard. I think it says, doesn't it say St. Petersburg or somewhere underneath there?
Probably.
But anyway, it did. I looked at it before. But it's almost 2/3 gone. Ouch. Oh, but it's Tito's all the way for me for now on.
That's right, baby. Texas Tito's.
Or else I'll find a Ukrainian vodka, but I think that might be in short supply pretty soon, considering what's happening over there. Now, one of the things Republicans are complaining, they complain about everything. Biden's too weak. Biden's too strong. You have the people apologizing and backpedaling now. You saw Trump the other day extolling Putin as a genius. And look what he got. He didn't have to sacrifice anything. And now he's got all this real estate. He looked upon this as if this was a real estate deal. And Putin didn't have to expend anything to grab the square mileage of Ukraine. He did that in a speech at Mar-a-Lago. But even he is starting to backpedal. And he did say Zelensky now is a heroic man. But don't forget who Trump is. There he is. That's the humiliation in Helsinki, where he said, I don't think Putin told me that he didn't do it, that he didn't try to influence the U.S. election. And I don't see why he would. Right. Why he would. And then he was asked, the U.S. intelligence agencies have pinned this on Russia. And Trump said he took Putin's side over the U.S. intelligence agencies.
That's nothing new.
Look at the two. That picture says it all. Trump, Putin's not a big man. I mean, he must have been standing on a platform or something. But Trump, it looks like he's acquiescing to his master. And look at Putin's face. I made you president. Now for payback. So I don't think in my entire life I've been more ashamed of a president. And that includes Bill Clinton, who it was discovered put a cigar into the vagina of Monica Lewinsky. I think Putin put a cigar into the anal orifice of Trump. All right. So, here's another thing. People are afraid that that if we take action against Russia, it will exacerbate the oil crisis around the world and raise the price of oil everywhere, including the United States. Now, I just discovered this, but do you know that before Trump abolished or negated the Iran nuclear deal, you remember that when he came into office, he signed it and he negated it? All right. In the year before that, Iran exported 32 million barrels of oil to the world. Once Trump negated the Iran nuclear deal, their exports of oil fell to 1 billion. So we're negotiating right now with Iran, trying to create a new deal. But this is another incentive to reinstate that Iran deal. I mean, if Iran comes on the market again, analysts believe now Iran could be exporting 4 billion barrels of oil a day. Now, it doesn't mean that oil comes to America, but if it goes around the world, if it goes to Japan and all the countries that we've made secondary examples of this boycott against Iranian oil, it will bring down the price of oil. So there's another incentive, to get that Iran deal together and bring down the price of oil. Here's another thing that, I read this book and, just like I read the last Woodward book about Trump, and I thought, I already know everything. And even now, reading this book is interesting, and it's full of little tidbits that I didn't know. At one point in the book, let me see where that is in here. I need my glasses for this. Sorry. Biden here.
And what book is this again?
It's Peril by
Peril. Okay.
Bob Woodward.
Right.
On April 13th, in a phone call, Russian President Vladimir Putin said, "I'm upset that you called me a killer." In an ABC News interview, Biden was asked, "Do you think Putin is a killer?" And he said, "I do." Is there any doubt about this? That Putin is a killer? He's a former KGB officer. I would just say this to President Zelensky. Hey, I don't look too bad with the glasses on, right? I would give President Zelensky this advice. When you open a door and touch a doorknob, wear gloves. And make sure you wear boxers. No, briefs, not boxers. Because, that's what they stuck in the underwear of the guy who was poisoned, who's now imprisoned in Russia. So anyway, he said he was upset that that Biden called him a killer. Now, Biden at one point said, "I'm warning you, we are coming at you." He also warned Putin not to start a new military incursion into Ukraine. And once again, Putin said that he was upset that he was called a killer. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, with all the other things that you're doing now, you're upset that somebody called you a name, a killer? Now, when Biden met Putin as vice president, he said, "Mr. Prime Minister, I'm looking into your eyes, and I don't think you have a soul." Putin smiled and said to Biden through an interpreter, "We understand each other."
Oof.
Right? So those were interesting tidbits, from the book Peril. All right, now I'm old enough to remember Khrushchev with his shoe banging on the table and saying, "We will bury you." I don't think you're old enough to remember that, but I remember that.
I know it. It's very famous.
All right, but that happened when I was a kid. I'm going to take another hit of this Russian vodka. It's going to be finished and then never, ever again. Okay?
You should boycott immediately. What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting to finish the bottle. So anyway, I'm old enough to remember when we found the Russian missiles in Cuba. And President Kennedy initiated a blockade of Cuba. And we sat around. Everybody thought, this is it. This is the start of the nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
Russian warships headed to Cuba. And we had American ships creating a blockade. And we thought, once they meet up, it almost was the end. There was one guy, I think, on a submarine who received the order to set off his missiles towards America. Now, on these Russian submarines, you need 2 keys in order to activate the nuclear missile. And the first guy turned the key to activate it. And the second guy said, if I turn this key, I may be ending the world. And he said, this could be a mistake. And I'm not going to turn the key. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he didn't. And it turned out to be a mistake. All right, here's another example. We hear over and over again that Putin was a lieutenant colonel in the KGB. But he's not the first leader of Russia to be in the KGB. Do you know there was a guy named Andropov?
Mm-hmm.
He was not an officer. He headed the entire KGB. That was 1983, 1984. Now, in 1983, the Russians shot down the KAL commercial passenger plane near Sakhalin Island. I don't know. Are you old enough to remember that?
That I think I remember, yeah.
All right. And on board, just ironically, was an American representative from the House of Representatives, a guy from Georgia, who was also the president of the John Birch Society. He was on the plane. So they downed that plane. Tensions were high, to say the least. Then there was something called, Able. We had war games where we were gaming out what would happen if there was a war with Russia, and we were forced to use nuclear weapons in response. What was it called? Something Able. What the hell? Let me go check this so I know it for it's only chance. All right. Well, you could look it up. It's something Able. So on the night of September 26th, 1983, the Soviet anti-orbital missile system reported an incontinental intercontinental ballistic missile launch from the U.S. into Russia. There was a guy named Stanislav Petrov who was on duty, and he said, "Oh, this must be a computer error." But it was his responsibility to respond. He didn't. Russia believed that it could have been an attack. Everything was on high alert. And the Soviet Union, believing its only chance of surviving a NATO strike was to preempt it, readied its nuclear arsenal because they saw all these things with war games and they thought they were for real.
Mm-hmm.
So they had their aircraft on high alert status and armed their nuclear capable aircraft in Poland. And the the group of Soviet forces in Germany, fighter bombers, were placed on 30-minute alert. That's how close, and nobody knows that. And who was the head of Russia at that time? A KGB, not officer. He was the head. He was the head of the whole KGB. And people are worried now about a possible nuclear war. Putin has threatened it.
I think you better get out the old videotape of Failsafe.
Yeah, right.
Because very poignant now.
All right, but here's another thing. Do you remember the way our impressions of Russia have changed? At one point, we thought Russian women all looked like Nikita Khrushchev in a babushka. Wendy's ran a commercial about the lack of consumer choice in Russia. Let's take a look at that.
Pay attention, please, thank you. Is next day there? Very nice. Is next evening there? Very nice.
Having no choice is no fun. That's why at Wendy's, every hamburger isn't dressed the same. Having a choice is better than not.
Is next swim there?
All right, then the Cold War ended, and we found out, or at least I found out when I was single, that Russian women were some of the most beautiful women in the world. They were, in fact, Putin once said to Trump, "We have the best whores in the world. Our prostitutes are the best."
Isn't that where they peed on him in Russia in the hotel?
Well, that's what Trump related about their conversation. But I could only imagine what the conversation was about where that braggadocio came up. Why would that come up in a conversation between the leader of the free world and the Russian leader? Anyway, our perceptions of Russia have changed over the years. And as with every show, at the end, I have a clip from one of the broadcasts that I did. In 1986, we invited a top Russian journalist to the show in Philadelphia. People Are Talking. We had half the audience, people who were Russian emigres who had fled Russia, half the audience from the Russia-U.S. Friendship Society. And we did this show. So I hope you enjoy this clip. It's a trip back to 1986 when we were all wondering, can we really trust Gorbachev?
People Are Talking. We have invited many people who have an interest in the Soviet Union to discuss this morning what is happening in terms of our perceptions of Russia. Let me introduce you to some of our guests this morning. Mark Koenig is from the W. Averill Harriman Institute for Advanced Study of the Soviet Union at Columbia University. They monitor Soviet television and can tell us how the Soviets see us. He monitors their TV stations 13 to 15 hours a day. Also joining us is Vladimir Zvyogin. He is a Soviet correspondent to the UN for Soviet TV and radio. And out here in our studio audience on this side, we have a group of Soviet immigrants who have come to the Delaware Valley and basically settled here in Philadelphia. They can tell us what life is like in the Soviet Union and how life there compares to life in Philadelphia. On this side of the audience, I have the U.S.-USSR Friendship Society, and their goals are to instigate a better understanding and friendship between our two nations. You can all give yourselves and our guests a round of applause. Thank you.
It's a propaganda for the Star War program. Indeed, at this time when we need cooperation, comprehension, understanding, confidence, this program, in fact, the series, what it's doing, it's whipping up an anti-Soviet hysteria. And this is saying, well, the Russians are coming, let's arm up. Let's build a defense shield, let's arm up, let's defend ourselves against the Russians who are just about to take over America.
Okay, but then let's deal with a basic premise here. Does the Soviet Union not believe in the world expansion of communism? And
well, the philosophy of Marxism definitely says that the next stage in the socio-economic development of society is socialism and communism.
All right.
When and how this will take place, I don't think anybody is prepared to say with any degree of certainty. But I don't think that you will have to agree that capitalism is unable to resolve any of its socio-economic problems it's facing today. So what is the next stage?
I don't know if I would agree
this.
with that. We do conquer some of our problems, a great deal of our problems.
Right.
I tend to feel we have a society that instills in people a sense of personal initiative and ambition, and tends to make them want to create the best human beings that they can be.
Are you suggesting that capitalism is the future of the world?
What's that?
Are you suggesting that capitalism is the future of the world?
I believe that freedom is the future of the world. Personal expression, personal ambition, a person's freedom to follow their own road in life. I hope and pray that will be the future of the world.
Realistically.
Yeah.
I believe that it isn't a question of what system is better than another system. I think the question of living on this earth together, both systems, is what's important. And I think that is possible. And that's what's important.
Okay, over here. Yes, sir. Stand up, please.
I'd like to ask Mr. Zavyagin. You was upset about yesterday part where its tanks destroyed this little village.
Killing people,
Yeah,
naming them.
but it was happened already when Russia come to Budapest in '56. It's happened in '68 in Prague. So Russia definitely invaded when they tried to keep some of the eastern country in his orbit.
I am a black American, and speaking of freedom, I'd rather be in America than to be in any other country in the world, in spite of all the handicaps that blacks may have in America. The gentleman here spoke as how in Russia he was referred to as Jewish. We have the same discrimination here in America against Jews, against blacks, and I understand that there are 62 ethnic groups in Russia, and I'm sure they have the same discrimination over there. But I'm wondering if they have the opportunity over there to demonstrate against these wrongs and to bring about change so that those people of the ethnic groups, such as blacks have gotten and Jewish have gotten elected to high office. We have a black mayor in the city of Philadelphia and doing a beautiful job.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Let me just tell you a little bit. We tried a little experiment. We asked students in the 6th grade at William Penn Charter School and at Our Lady of Consolation, grade 6, to tell us about how they would view life in Russia. Let me read some of the things to them and get some of your reactions to them. Here's one. I think that Russia's strict on its people. They have to wait in line for food. Sometimes it would take a whole day just to get your food. Everything is expensive, and if you break their law, they will put you in the desolate place of Russia. In Russia, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. People are not free to practice their own religion. Here's somebody who said, I think Russia's probably nice, and they have more customs and tradition than the U.S., but I don't think I could live there because they don't have a lot of freedom. I think life in Russia would be very isolated. I think it would be mostly by the book. And Russia, families probably are closer than American families because of no TV and no radios. Some of the impressions we have of Russia are that it's a fairly desolate place, it seems, or that our children have. Last segment, I was talking about a movie that had been made by the Defense Department. It was hosted by Jack Webb, who was, of course, the major character of Joe Friday on Dragnet as well. But in this scene, you'll see something that will remind you very much of what took place in America, and this movie was made in 1955. Let's take a look at that.
Now that you've become acquainted with the enlightened communist system, in contrast to the outdated capitalistic way of life, you are now prepared for the next step of your indoctrination, which will be most difficult. When the moral fiber of the United States weakens and the economy collapses under the pressure of competitive coexistence, you will assume control. You will move into every phase of American political and economic life. It will be your responsibility, comrades, to purge the minds of the reactionary Americans.
Well, of course, here in America, we also had that movie Red Dawn, where a bunch of teenagers beat the Russian military when they invaded the United States. That's the original version of Red Dawn. which is a joke, of course. And we're seeing the reality right now. So I'd like to remind you, you can listen to this podcast on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or on YouTube under Richard Bey Talk. But as I end the show, I want to toast. Now, in Russia, they say Nostrovia. but in the Ukraine.
Should I get mine too?
Sure.
Okay, let me get my bottle open.
But in the Ukraine, they say Bodmo. Bodmo.
What do they say?
Budmo.
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 Budmo, Richard.
So, first off, Budmo, Ukraine.
Budmo, Ukraine.
Budmo, Zelensky.
Oh, another one? Budmo, Zelensky.
Budmo, Kiev.
Kiev, too? I'm getting drunk here. Budmo, Kiev.
Oh. And Budmo to all of you who have tuned in today. Wow.
That's good stuff. The Stoli's good stuff.
Ooh, boy. Oh, man. I better not light a match in front of my mouth now. Anyway, thanks once again for joining me. And as always, all my best. Take care.